In the olden days, before the noise of lorries and motorbikes filled the roads, there was a quiet village called Okuta. It was a place where the people still lived close to the land. The men worked the farms, bending under the hot sun as they tilled the soil, planting yams, maize, and cassava. The women fetched water from the river in clay pots, balanced gracefully on their heads. Children played in the dust, chasing each other with bare feet and loud laughter. Life in Okuta followed the rhythm of nature. Morning began with the cry of roosters, and night arrived with the songs of crickets and the croaking of frogs. In the evenings, when the work of the day was done, the villagers gathered in small groups under the big iroko tree or around their cooking fires. There they shared palm wine, roasted maize, and stories of the spirits, gods, and heroes of old. It was a peaceful village, or so it seemed. But beneath that peace, something dark and strange was already growing. One by one, young men began to die. At first it was whispered that the deaths were accidents. One man was found lying stiff on the path that led to the farm. Another was discovered near the stream, his body pale and cold. But when the deaths continued, the people began to notice a strange mark left behind on every body. It was always the same. 2 small holes, side by side, pressed into the skin of the chest, as if something had bitten deep and drunk from the heart itself. The villagers grew afraid. Mothers warned their sons not to stay out too late. Fathers told their boys to avoid walking alone at night. Hunters began to wonder if some powerful snake had entered their land, a serpent unlike any they had seen before. Yet no matter how many traps they set, or how deep they searched the forest, they found nothing. And still, the bodies kept appearing. The strange thing was that only young men were dying. No woman, no child, no elder had been touched. It was always the men in their youth and strength. This mystery spread fear across Okuta, and people began to whisper that it was no ordinary snake, but a spirit of death hiding in the village itself. But while the people trembled, there was one woman who did not seem afraid at all. Her name was Ngozi. Ngozi was the most beautiful woman in Okuta. Her skin was smooth and glowing, her eyes sparkled like the river on a sunny day, and her smile was enough to make men forget their names. When she walked through the market, heads turned. Men of all ages found themselves watching her, even those with wives waiting at home. She moved with the grace of a queen, and when she laughed, it sounded like sweet music. The young men of Okuta competed for her attention. They carried heavy loads for her at the market. They brought gifts of roasted yam, fresh palm wine, or meat from their hunts. They stood taller when she passed, hoping she would notice them. Some even quarreled with one another, fighting over who had the right to sit near her during festivals. To the eyes of the villagers, Ngozi was only a woman blessed with beauty, but hidden beneath her charm was a terrible secret. For Ngozi was not like other women. She carried within her body a darkness no one could imagine. At night, when she chose a man and led him to her hut, the truth would be revealed. She would welcome him with warmth, with a smile that melted all fear. She would sit close, her laughter soft, her movements gentle, and when she pressed herself against him, when her chest touched his, that was when the secret showed itself. For within her very breast lived a serpent, a snake that was not born of the earth, but of dark power. It was not always visible, not always awake. But when she desired it, the serpent stirred inside her, its head rising, its fangs ready. The moment the man felt her embrace, the snake struck, sinking its fangs into his chest. The man never lived to tell the tale. By morning, his body would be found, drained of life, with the same 2 marks left as a signature of death. The people did not suspect Ngozi. How could they? She was too beautiful, too perfect. In their eyes, she was the jewel of the village. But beauty was the very mask that hid her evil. And so, While mothers wept for their sons and fathers buried their children, Ngozi continued to smile, continued to walk proudly through the village, hiding the serpent that lived within her. The deaths grew so frequent that some families began to send their sons away, asking relatives in other villages to shelter them. But no matter how much fear filled the air, no one could point a finger at Ngozi, not yet, because to accuse her was to accuse beauty itself. Far away from Okuta, beyond the hills and rivers, there was another village called Umuchi. It was there that a young man named Uchenna was born. Uchenna was not the strongest man among his people, nor the wealthiest, but he carried within him a heart that was steady, eyes that noticed what others ignored, and a spirit that did not bend easily to fear. From childhood, he was known for asking questions that others dared not ask. While other boys chased goats and wrestled in the dust, Uchenna would sit quietly, watching the world, listening to the songs of the birds and the whispers of the elders. But peace did not last for him. One season, when the yam barns were full and the air smelled of roasted harvest, tragedy struck Uchenna's family. His elder brother, strong and full of life, went missing after an evening of celebration. The villagers searched the bushes, the riverside, and the pathways until they found him lying cold beneath a palm tree. His body carried the same mysterious marks that would later appear in Okuta, 2 small holes across his chest, like the fangs of a serpent had pierced him. The people of Umuchi mourned. They said it must have been the work of a spirit, some wandering demon from the forests. But Uchenna was not satisfied. He noticed how his brother's body looked drained, as though life itself had been sucked away. He noticed how his brother had been last seen sitting near a strange woman who no one truly knew, a woman who had passed through the village only briefly. She too was beautiful, too beautiful to belong to any one place. Uchenna carried this pain like a fire inside him. From that day, he vowed that he would not rest until he uncovered the truth behind his brother's death. Seasons passed and life in Umuchi went on, but Uchenna did not forget. Then one evening, as he sat near the fire, listening to travelers, he heard a tale that froze his heart. The travelers spoke of a village called Okuta, where young men were dying in strange ways. They said the bodies were always found pale, cold, and marked with the sign of 2 small holes in the chest. The moment Uchenna heard this, he knew the hand of fate was calling him. He decided he would go to Okuta. He would not only search for answers, but also put an end to the evil that had stolen his brother. Before he left, Uchenna went to visit the old priest of Umuchi, a man who had lived many seasons and seen many secrets. The priest listened as Uchenna poured out his heart. He spoke of his brother's death, of his vow, and of the strange story he had heard of Okuta. The priest nodded slowly, then told him that the evil he sought was no ordinary serpent, no ordinary witchcraft. It was a spirit that hid itself in a form pleasing to the eyes, a spirit that devoured men not with claws or teeth, but with beauty itself. The priest warned that many had fallen because they were blinded by desire. He then gave Uchenna a small clay lamp, its flame faint but steady. He told him the lamp carried the fire of truth, a fire that could not be quenched by lies or shadows. He said that wherever this flame burned, hidden things would be forced into the open. The priest instructed him never to let the flame die, for it would be his only shield against the serpent spirit. With the lamp wrapped carefully in a cloth, Uchenna set out for Okuta. The journey took him through forests thick with tall trees, across streams that gurgled with cold water, and over hills where the wind howled like spirits of the night. Along the way, he asked questions quietly in his heart. Would he truly have the strength to face this evil? Would he succeed where others had perished? But each time doubt rose, he remembered his brother lying lifeless under the palm tree. That memory hardened his resolve. After many days, Uchenna arrived at Okuta. At first he found the village just as peaceful as the travelers had described. He saw men tilling the soil, women pounding yam with heavy mortars, and children running about with dust on their legs. But beneath the normal life, he felt something uneasy in the air, like a drum beat too low to hear, but strong enough to shake the ground. He did not announce himself loudly. Instead, he blended in, speaking kindly to the people, helping the men in the farms, carrying loads at the market, and listening whenever the villagers gathered to tell stories. Slowly, he began to learn of the deaths. He heard the fear in the voices of mothers. He saw the pain in the eyes of fathers. He noticed how people grew silent whenever the deaths were mentioned, as though even the words carried danger. And he also noticed Ngozi. She was everything the stories had painted her to be. She walked like one who owned the ground itself, her beauty too sharp to ignore. Uchenna saw how men trembled when she passed, how even married men lowered their eyes, but not quickly enough to hide their longing. He noticed how her smile spread easily, yet her eyes never truly warmed. And though no one suspected her, Uchenna felt a stirring of suspicion in his heart, for her face reminded him of the strange woman who had passed through Umuchi before his brother died. The resemblance was not exact, but it was close enough to set his spirit on edge. Uchenna did not rush. He knew that to face such a hidden evil required patience. He decided to watch quietly, to learn her ways, and to wait for the right moment. But the more he watched, the more the truth began to whisper itself to him. He noticed how the deaths seemed to follow her path, how the men who died were often those who had been seen close to her. He saw how her smile never faltered even when others wept, and he began to believe that the serpent he sought was not in the forest, but in the breast of the woman who walked so proudly through the village. Yet knowing the truth and proving it were not the same. Uchenna understood that the only way to reveal her secret was to let the serpent show itself. And that meant placing himself in danger greater than any he had faced before. Still, he tightened his heart. He had come for this very reason. So he began to prepare himself, not with charms or weapons of iron, but with courage, patience, and the fire of truth that glowed in the small clay lamp he carried. And in the silence of his soul, he prayed that when the time came, his heart would not fail him. As days turned into weeks, Uchenna lived quietly among the people of Okuta. He helped them in their farms, he fetched water from the stream, and he joined them during moonlight gatherings where stories and songs filled the air. The villagers soon grew fond of him. They said he was humble and hard-working, a stranger who did not behave like a stranger. But as much as he smiled and labored with them, his eyes were always searching. His heart remained fixed on the vow he had carried from his village. Then one evening, when the air was cool and the moonlight silvered the leaves, Ngozi noticed him. It was during a gathering under the great iroko tree. The villagers had come together to drink palm wine and share roasted corn after a long day. Drums beat softly in the background, children ran about with laughter, and elders sat in circles, speaking of old times. Ngozi arrived as she always did, glowing like the evening star. Heads turned, men shifted on their mats, and women whispered among themselves. But for the first time, Ngozi's eyes fell not on the men who had long sought her attention. Instead, they rested on Uchenna. She studied him quietly, this stranger who did not look at her with the same hungry eyes as the others. She noticed his calmness, the way he laughed with children, the way he listened more than he spoke. He was not like the others, and that difference caught her interest. That night she began to ask about him. She learned that he had come from another village, that he was strong on the farm, and that he carried himself with dignity. The more she heard, the more her desire grew. In the days that followed, she began to draw nearer to him. She walked past him in the market, letting her smile linger. She spoke softly when others were listening, pretending it was only by chance. She made herself appear where he was, as though the spirits themselves had pushed her steps toward him.